if you already watched my previous video about my travel art kit, welcome back, especially if you're one of my lovely new subscribers. If you've not seen it, I'll try and figure out how to add a link. I'm still new at doing this, so bear with me. In that video, I joked that I didn't think anybody would ever see it because I only had 4 subscribers. And now, just a couple of weeks later, I've got 21. I know 21 is still a low number, but that's a 500% increase. Obviously, I don't expect to carry on that kind of percentage, but I'm really grateful for those of you that have subscribed, and especially those that left encouraging comments for me. That was really nice and unexpected, meant a lot. In terms of what I did on my holiday last week, I'm pretty happy with all the sketches that I did. Of course, I see the faults in everything, and I think most of us who are creative see the faults in what we create ourselves, and we think what everybody else does is perfect. But I'm happy enough with everything I did to share it with you, and that's about as good as it gets around here for self-praise. So let me show you what I did. So the journal is one that I made myself from scratch, particularly for this trip. And inside we've got a little itinerary card. And the idea for this is not to list every place that I went on my journey, but that it would be a kind of contents for the different places which are documented within this book. And it's got a little pre-printed map on the back which seemed appropriate. That just sits in that little pocket. Bradford on Avon is the town where I went. It's only about an hour's drive from where I live, so not exactly a faraway exotic destination, but it was lovely. And the reason that I put the 2 blue wiggly lines through Bradford is because it's a town which sits on a river and also a canal. And then there's a photo of the place where I stayed. Okay, so here, 3 maps. This long one, I mean, this is where I stayed here, but I wanted to show the context because the Kennet and Avon Canal joins the River Avon and the River Kennet, so I wanted to kind of show in context where it was. And for those of you that are not in the UK, London is kind of just over here somewhere. And then I did a closer in of the town, so it's a map of the town centre essentially. This particular map I did after I got home because I wanted to make sure I could scale it down to cover most of the main attractions that I visited in the town. And then across here is the site where I stayed. So Tom, that's the name of the little shepherd's hut where I stayed. And then there were 2 other little ones down the bottom of the field. So we've got Tom, Dick and Harriet. Shows the sense of humour of the owners, but it was a lovely, lovely place to stay. So if you're ever looking for somewhere to stay in or near Bradford on Avon, I highly recommend Woodbrook Barns. It was lovely. And then this page also did before I went away, showing the different supplies that I was taking in my bag. And basically I pretty much used everything that I took apart from the white pens. I used all the colours of my little DIY paint set. I used the watercolour pencils, although probably not every colour. I used the pigment liners a lot, and the 4-in-1 pen. I think I only used the pencil on that one, but yeah, basically everything got used. And obviously this book in my pop-up pencil case, which I love. Love that pencil case. It was amazing. Worked so well. And then here, before I went, I did a list of places that I wanted to visit. I ticked off all the places on my list and also 3 extra ones which I hadn't thought I'd get time to go and see. And then here, this is the start of my journey. So the road I took to get to Bradford on Avon took me through Avebury. If you've not heard of Avebury, I think it's kind of a less well-known prehistoric stone circle. It's not as impressive as Stonehenge, but it is on a much bigger scale. It covers a much bigger area, goes sort of through the town, and the road goes through the middle of it. So this is the road that I took past this big stone. And this particular drawing I did after I came home, and I got the image from Google Earth. So I didn't actually stop at the side of the road to do this. I did this one from Google Earth after I got home, and that was watercolour and the pen. So the first sketch I did when I actually got to Bradford on Avon was this Saxon church, and I'm quite fascinated by buildings that have obviously changed over the centuries. So it looks like, you know, what was windows that have been bricked up, and here it looks like there was some kind of porch at some point which has been removed, and then these kind of buttresses I think have been added at a later date. So, you know, just fascinated with the history of how buildings change over time and when they get restored and updated and used for different purposes. And then obviously this is sort of the journal part of the book, description of where I went, the wrong turns that I took, things that I wanted to draw but didn't, and you know, so on. Okay, and then here, this is also in the town centre. So this is the town bridge which goes over the River Avon. There were actually some newer buildings in the background, but I decided to leave those out of my drawing. And then this here, it's like a little extra square building which is attached to the bridge, and its main purpose was as a lockup for drunks, or you know, minor criminals who were waiting to go and see the magistrate. Later in the week I came back into the town centre, and just by pure chance it was one of the few days when this building is actually open to the public. So later in the week I did actually go inside this little building, which was interesting. But yeah, I'll mention that again later. Here, this is just a photo of a view from the top of the town looking down, and then my little sketch of Tom, my shepherd's hut. And this one I did with watercolour, but using the water brushes rather than proper brushes, and I like it. You know, it captures the place where I was, but it's not at all accurate. I mean, it was only after it was too late I realised I've drawn the front end too low, because I could actually see the axle from this wheel going across. So again, this is one of those things where I look at my own drawing and I know it's not accurate, but it captures the memory, and that's the most important thing, I think. So this day was actually the reason for me taking a holiday last week. It's actually been about 10 years since my husband died, but last week would have been our 25th wedding anniversary, and I didn't want to let it go by without doing something special, even though I was on my own. And I actually bought myself some silver earrings and a necklace. You know, it's not, celebrate is not the right word, but I wanted to do something to commemorate the day, and you know, something special. So that's what that's about. Now this day it actually rained pretty much all day, so I couldn't do any sketching when I was out and about, but I did take a lot of photos, and then in the evening I drew this map of where I'd been. So my walk started over here, along the canal. I went through a wooded area, and then over here had lunch under the bridge, which I shared with some ducks, and then came back along the canal, and back. And then I've just made some little notes about, you know, different things that I saw or that happened while I was on this walk in the rain. It was actually really nice, and my highlight was sharing my lunch with the ducks. And then I'd actually left these 2 pages blank to fill in later. So on the walk, September in the UK, it's kind of sort of start of autumn really, and there were loads of berries and seeds on the bushes and trees. and originally I thought I'd go through my photos and sketch them all, but I hadn't realised quite how many there were, so I ended up just printing off small versions of the photos of the different berries. These photos are too small really to see in any detail, but it's just a memory of all the different things that I saw. And then over here, this is my feet with my muddy wet jeans while I was sat under the bridge, under the canal bridge, having my lunch. And there were 12 ducks that came to share my lunch with me, but this particular one, he hung around after all the others had gone, and he was having a stretch and a scratch and a preen, like, really close to me. It was just a really nice moment. My little duck friend. Okay, then the next day I went for a really long walk. I didn't do any sketching really while I was on the walk. It was more about the walking this day, but I did do a little diagram of the aqueduct that I went over. This is a side view of the aqueduct in the photo, and where the canal crosses over the river. And then from there I carried on walking to a second aqueduct, and then when I started walking back, that's when I discovered I had some rather nasty blisters, and it was still such a long way. But on the way back, there was actually, back at the first aqueduct, there was also actually a little train station. So I actually got the train, just one stop. It was literally only 3 minutes on the train, but it saved about an hour of walking time, and that meant I could, 1 hour less of walking on my massive blisters. So this sign for the little train station, I started drawing this while I was waiting for the train, and then I finished it later when I got back to my accommodation. And then the seat which was on the train platform, I copied that from a photo that I'd taken. And then again I did a map of my really long walk, so starting down here along the canal past, well, to two aqueducts, and then back again. The train station, it's just this little section here I went on the train, and then because I still had to walk from there back to the accommodation. I don't know how well you can see the photo in the video, but there was a heron, and I managed to get a good shot of the heron flying away. There was a boat that I saw named Stella, which is my mum's name, so I had to get a photo of the name. And there's the little station near where I'm staying, which was designed by Isambard Kingdom Brunel. So lots of history in this place. And then in the evening, after that long walk, I had some cider, and there was this little stove in the shepherd's hut, which I tried to light. I mean, I managed to get it burning for about 5 minutes, but that was all. But that was enough to give me the satisfaction that I'd actually had a fire lit, even though it wasn't burning very long. Before I lit the fire, I actually opened up the bottom just to check the grate underneath, and there was a tiny little dead bat in the bottom, which is really sad, but it was so cute. But I'm so grateful that I checked before I lit the fire, because if I'd found that little bat afterwards, I would have been devastated, because I would have thought it would have been me that had killed it. So yeah, there's a photo of that later on, but yeah, it was very cute. And then the next day, my foot was still really sore from my big blister on the bottom of my foot. So I did lots of sketching the next day. It was a good excuse to sit and sketch and not walk too much. So this building is the Tuck Barn. So this is where I was having my breakfast in the morning, and my table was just inside this little corner here. Not that that makes any difference to you, but that's where I was sat having my breakfast every day, and I'm really quite pleased with this one. The colour of the stone is not great. It wasn't as yellow as I've as I've painted it, but apart from that, I'm pretty happy with that one. And then this is my favourite spread in the whole sketchbook. This is a tithe barn that was built in the 14th century, and then two views of the granary building which was nearby. Now my view of this here doesn't look that big, so I included the little diagram because from the angle where I was sat I could only sort of see this part, but the actual tithe barn is huge. It's 51 meters long, 10 meters wide, and I even included the little pigeon that was sat on top of the roof for a while. When I sat to draw this, I was actually sat sort of on the end of the wall here, looking across to the tithe barn, and then when I drew this one, I was actually sat on this little bit of wall on the tithe barn. So these two buildings were close together. And this, oh dear, the angles on this, I mean the roof is such a weird shape, and trying to get the angles, because it's not symmetrical, because it's, you know, it's done with these beams of wood which you know, whatever shape the tree was that was used, so it was really tricky getting the angles right on those. So I'm actually really happy with those sketches, and I love how they look together on the page as well. So yeah, that's my favourite pages that I've done. And then from there, so this is then one of the lock gates next to a bridge. I was sat for so long drawing this because this is actually a really busy lock, and while I was sat trying to draw it, the gates were opened and closed about 5 or 6 times. So every time I started drawing something, like the gate was being moved, so then I'd try and do a bit of the bridge, or I'd try and do a rough bit of the house in the background until they kind of closed it again, and then I could draw a bit more. So yeah, that was a really slow drawing, but it was a really nice experience, and the people that were coming through with their boats were really friendly, wanted to have a look at what I was doing. Some of them were like explaining to me about the different parts of the machinery, how it works with the lock gates. So really nice memories of sitting and drawing that. Okay, this was my last day, so lots of writing, and this is the plan. Remember I mentioned earlier about the little lockup that was on the town bridge. So this is just a little plan of inside. So you just go in the main door, and then there's 2 cells with metal beds that have got four metal rings for shackling the prisoners to the beds. And then there was a little toilet in the corner of each cell, which was what they call a long drop. So basically what went into the toilet just came out the bottom straight into the river. But yeah, that was really interesting to see. I had no idea that building was ever open to the public, and apparently they only open it, I think the lady said 4 days a year. So the fact that I just happened to be there on that day, I'd actually gone back into the town to go to the local museum, and I got there early, so I was just having a wander. So it was purely by chance that I saw it was open. So that was quite interesting to see. Not that my sketch is very interesting, but for me it brings back the memory of being in there. So yeah, that was nice. And then from there I went to this place called Iford Manor, and if you've ever heard of the garden designer Harold Peto, this was actually the house where he lived. So it wasn't a garden that he was paid to design for somebody else, it was his own garden. So that was really nice to see his own designs. And this little window was kind of inside an open loggia, I don't know, no idea how you pronounce that. But yeah, the window was Italian Renaissance, and there was a wisteria outside that was kind of growing in through the windows, really lovely. And there was a nice little table and chairs where I could sit to draw that. So it was actually a really nice experience sitting there in the sunshine, but undercover. Yeah, strange. I've not explained that very well, but you know. Anyway, let's move along. And this one is an 18th century garden house. This balustrade, like the railings, Harold Peto had actually rescued this from the river. At some point, the previous owners had had this balustrade along the edge of the property, and it had fallen into the river, and he'd rescued it and put it next to this little house. This one, I was actually sat on the grass, and I was like on a downward slope, and it was really uncomfortable. So I sat there drawing this for as long as I could manage, but I did end up finishing off some of the details later on from the photo that I took, because it was just too uncomfortable to sit there too long. And then these two were ones that I did after I got home from photos. This little dog, oh, he made me laugh so much. There was a pair of these dog sculptures that they think were originally on gateposts, and they're 18th century German pieces. And the other dog was very prim and proper, sat upright, looking up, very, very demure. And this one, having a good old scratch, just a real character. And I've not captured the character at all, you know, and he was kind of had his head on the angle, which you can't really tell from my sketch. But again, it captures the memory, you know. It was just a really, really funny moment when I saw him, and I just laughed, because I could just imagine, you know what it's like when you have your photo taken and then it's like, oh, they've taken the photo just as I've blinked. And the equivalent here is like, oh, you're having your sculpture done, and you get sculpted just as you're having a scratch. But anyway, that was that amused me. And then this one here, just the gardener had just left a watering can on the steps while they'd gone off to do something. And I just love the, you know, the steps and the greenery growing up in between the steps. Again, I've not got a very good colour with the stone. It was not that colour. I need to practice mixing colour for stone, because that seems to be a problem area. But again, you know, I just like it, just like overall the composition and it was just a nice little moment. And then that's the end of my journal. And then I just finished it off with some photos. So this is where I was staying. So this is Tom, my little shepherd's hut. And then just across here in this building is the toilet and the shower. So I had to walk out across, you know, which was fine during the day. It was a bit of a pain at night if I needed the loo, but it wasn't far, and there was a security light, so you know, it was fine. And then these are the Dick and Harriet at the other end of the field. Little Flo, who was the owner's dog, she was sweet. And then there's just some photos of the inside of the shepherd's hut with the little details. Just such a lovely, cute place. I just loved it so much. It's me peeking out of the door. It's a couple of early morning views from looking out the front door of my hut. I say front door, I mean the only door. This was inside the tuck barn where I had breakfast, and then there's a full page devoted to the breakfast because it was lovely. Really, really nice breakfast. This is the opposite side of the bridge from the one I drew earlier. So here, this side is very plain. You've just got, it's just like a flat wall with the arches, and then obviously the door side of the lockup. But on this side, it's much more ornate, and the shape of the pillars and all the fancy. But there wasn't really anywhere sensible that I could sit to draw this, and I did make one attempt at drawing it standing, but it was just too complicated, and I couldn't find anywhere to sit and do it properly, so I settled for a photo instead. This was a big piece of machinery that I wanted to draw, but it was actually in a glass case, and the reflections off the glass made it too difficult to draw, so again, just a photo. And then there's a few photos from along the canal, from my various walks along the canal. Some history about the Kennet and Avon canal, and then this was my little bat. I mean, look how cute he is. So even though he was dead, and it's a little bit morbid putting photos of a dead animal in my sketchbook, but I'm never likely to see a bat that close again. But yeah, very sweet. So that's it, and then I've got, you know, pages left for another trip somewhere else. So thank you for your patience of going through that with me. It's more about my holiday than the actual sketches, I'm afraid, but it's difficult to separate what I've drawn or how I've drawn it from my experience of being there. So I hope it's been interesting, and I hope you'll come back again and see any future videos that I do. So thank you very much.